Welcome to the Totally Honest Cooking Show. Today we're doing a corned beef brisket. I'm Mark. We're going to sear this sucker. Looking at the instructions in the back, I was going to try to follow the directions and be like, ooh, it's not that hard to do a grocery store style corned beef. But I don't want boiled beef. You can totally do it that way. It's a very traditional, very Irish kind of thing. I like braised meat. So we're going to start by getting this bad boy out of the container. This is about 2.5 pounds. Okay, once the container is open, you have mostly won. Taking a few tablespoons of butter, melting it in my usual braising pan. I'm also going to take this minute to preheat my oven to like 325. I looked at a couple recipes for this. I'm not really following a recipe because honestly, I got this brisket because it was on sale. I didn't really look at anything involved with it. And I'm just kind of having fun in the kitchen. You know what we do here. While that's going, I've got some water over here. I'm gonna take some better than bouillon beef and make a little broth. That's about 2 cups of water. So 2 cups of broth if you got it. Okay, now we're just gonna place this thing in the butter. And we're gonna sear all sides of it. And we're just trying to make sure it picks up some color on all sides. Okay, so it looks like this is as good as it gets. We're just going to flip it so I can avoid burning it in places and cooking it in others. I'm also going to turn the heat down a little bit because I think it's too high. And we're just making sure that it looks like this on all sides before we keep moving. Once it starts looking nice on all sides, we're going to start painting it with a little bit of Dijon mustard. Now there's a lot of ways you can do this. I've seen a lot of recipes. Well, that's a lie. Let's be honest, it's the Totally Honest Cooking Show. I've seen a few recipes. I look, anytime I do this, I look at it, I see what is out there, and then I'm going to go with whatever I have. Mustard is a pretty traditional thing that everybody has. So, since I have some mustard left over from that episode last week, I'm going to go ahead and paint my brisket with my mustard. And then we're going to go totally non-traditional based on what I have in the house, because that's how I'm rolling today. St. Patrick's Day is coming, and you see these in the store all the time, and some people might be like, I don't know how to do that. So even if you don't know what you're doing, the Totally Honest Cooking Show is here for you. And it doesn't know what it's doing either. And that's kind of the point, right? Right. Once your beef is slathered in the mustard, we're ready to move on to our next thing. I'm going to braise this with potatoes and onions. Now, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, Mark, potatoes and onions, what about the cabbage? There should be cabbage in there. That's the whole thing, corned beef and cabbage. We're gonna wait till this is almost done, about 15 to 20 minutes out, maybe 20 to 30, and I'm gonna make some fried cabbage. I kind of mutilated this onion, didn't I? It's okay. Now I know what you're going to say, that looks like a lot of onions, and it is, but I like onions, and I feel like I can reuse them with the mushrooms that I have left over. Next we're going to add in a few potatoes. Now I know this isn't a very big brisket for all this veg, but I do like leftovers, and I do like the ability to use the sides and other things. So I'm going to take my 2 cups of braising liquid, pour that in there. I'm also going to crush up a bunch of garlic. This looks like about 6 cloves. And you want it nice and crushed. And just chuck it in the liquid. Also, I got all this fresh rosemary and thyme. And they go great with potatoes. So we'll say a tablespoon. Though it's probably going to be more for mine. Because like I said, I got a lot. And I'm just putting in there right over the top of the liquid around the potatoes and the onions. And of course the meat. And we'll repeat with some of our rosemary. Now that's probably a little non-traditional, but whatever. Okay. This gets braised covered. We're going to cook this until it's around 145 degrees with a lid on it. I'm going to try using my fancy schmancy probe thermometer. We'll see if it actually works. But this should take... Hold on. This should take about 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours. And theoretically, this will go off when I hit the right temp. I'll be back in a minute to do the cabbage. But we're putting it in the oven. Okay, it only took 1 hour and 45 minutes to get up to temp. So, I'm going to go ahead and transfer this onto a carving board that has some tin foil on it. I'm doing this to let the meat rest outside of the cooking liquid. I'm going to let this rest for about, like 20 to 30 minutes. Now, full disclosure. You could easily tear into that roast in about 15 minutes. You let it rest for about 15, you'll be good. However, it cooked faster than I thought it would. And it's such a big roast and that pan wasn't quite high enough to use the timer. So, I didn't make the cabbage yet. So we're making the cabbage now. So I've got a lot of butter, like 4 tablespoons, we'll say. That's going to come up to temp. I'm going to grab my olive oil and throw some of that in there too. That was more than I wanted, but that'll be okay. Got a head of green cabbage that we're cutting in half. Then we're going to cut out the heart. Just like in Temple of Doom. Now we're going to roughly chop it. My mother makes this from time to time. She said to take your time with it, let it go slowish, and that it'll cook up in about 20 to 30 minutes. Again, that's why we're letting the roast go a little longer than I would normally let it go. But luckily we've got aluminum foil, so yay. Now, if we want to speed up the process a little bit, we can put a lid on it, let it cook a little faster. But we're going to take the lid off as it gets closer so that it can caramelize a little bit. And I'm going to deconstruct these a little bit, just because that seems like it would help. Oh. Yeah, there's a lot of, one of the reasons that sometimes people avoid cooking is because there's a lot of moments. I've never made corned beef and cabbage. I mean, I've certainly cooked things adjacent to it in the family. So I feel like I know what I'm doing, but you know how that goes. Sometimes you feel like you know what you're doing and you do not, in fact, know what you're doing. I'm gonna season it with a little bit of salt. Okay, that was kind of a lot of salt, but it's a big pinch because it's a head of cabbage. And I'll put some pepper over the top, because I like pepper. Then we'll get Bernie out, give it a little twiddle around, let everybody get a little bit of oil. I may have to lower the temperature because it looks like it's getting singed a little bit. Yeah, let's do that. Take it down to, it was on medium, now I'm going a little bit more medium low, I guess. You don't want it to burn before it has a chance to cook and caramelize. Okay, I let it sit covered for about 8 minutes with the heat kind of medium low. Then I turned the heat back up to medium. The idea there was to get some steam behind it, and then we could actually turn the heat up and then start to cook it down. So, you know, soften it up a little bit with the steam and then let the cast iron do its job and get some color in it. I think it's probably going to be harder to get color into it while it's covered, so that's why I took the lid off and I'm mixing her about. I'm also going to take this moment to add a little bit more butter because holiday food is always extra fatty. I don't know if that's a formal rule or not, but I feel like it is. And try to get the bits that look like they're the least cooked on the underneath. That'll help them cook. When you do this, don't forget that your corned beef container is going to be hot. I took the lid off without, or I tried to take the lid off without a glove on. That was stupid. Didn't get it on video. So far, I haven't released any episodes where I've been burned. But I got one coming soon. Oh yes. And while this is coming up, I poured myself a little cup of Dijon, and I'm just going to give it a little coarse pepper. And then I'm going to give it a little more coarse pepper. Give it a little mix. Kind of a peppery Dijon dipping sauce for the beef. Okay, this is starting to get there. I'll be back in a couple minutes when it's a little closer. For the last couple minutes of cooking, I'm going to turn it up to medium-high and see if I can get a little bit more color on it. But notice that I am getting a lot of color on it. Okay, well that's wrapping up. I'm going to start carving a little bit. You carve this up the way you want it. I'm doing these little steak strips. Let's get to plating. Okay, make sure you get a little bit of everything. Put it on your plate. Cabbage turned out pretty good. Okay. You know what time it is. Like, subscribe, click the little bell. Me and this corned beef got to get to know each other a little bit. I'll see you next Wednesday. Bye.